FIFA now has a match ball so advanced that it can reportedly detect the slightest contact, even something as tiny as a single strand of human hair brushing against its surface. Earlier in this very tournament, that technology did exactly that, helping rule out a goal after detecting the ball had barely grazed a player's hair. So explain this. How could that same revolutionary system examine one of the biggest moments of a World Cup quarterfinal, an incident that millions of viewers believed they clearly witnessed, and conclude that absolutely nothing had happened? Norway is heading home, England is marching into the semi-finals, and the controversy has left football fans asking the same two questions. Does VAR technology truly work the way FIFA claims, or is it only trusted when it supports certain decisions? Before diving into the controversy, however, this match deserves recognition because it was an outstanding contest that should not be remembered only for the arguments afterward. The game unfolded under incredibly difficult conditions. It was one of those brutal Miami afternoons where the temperature at kickoff felt like 113 degrees Fahrenheit once the humidity was taken into account. It tested physical endurance just as much as footballing ability. For long stretches of the match, Norway looked like the superior side. Andreas Skjelderup gave them the lead in the 36th minute with a beautifully struck effort that beat Jordan Pickford at his near post. Norwegian supporters inside the stadium erupted into chants of England's going home, convinced they were watching Erling Haaland and Martin Odegaard control the biggest match in their country's history. Norway, competing in its first-ever World Cup quarterfinal, stood only 45 minutes away from reaching a semi-final that almost nobody believed possible before the tournament began. Then, just as he has done throughout the competition, Jude Bellingham changed everything. Deep into first-half stoppage time, he received a pass from Anthony Gordon, drove confidently into the penalty area, and finished superbly across the goalkeeper to level the match at 1-1. It was an outstanding goal. Yet that finish is not what created the controversy. The debate centers on what happened roughly 30 yards away only seconds before the ball reached Bellingham. The second half belonged almost entirely to Norway. Martin Odegaard dictated the tempo, Kristoffer Ajer crashed an effort against the crossbar, and Bukayo Saka produced a dangerous cross that England desperately scrambled away from its own goal line. Norway controlled much of the play but failed to score the second goal that could have finished the contest. Then, in the third minute of extra time, Bellingham delivered once more. Goalkeeper Orjan Nyland could only spill a shot from substitute Morgan Rogers directly into his path, and Bellingham reacted instantly by smashing the rebound into the net. It became his sixth goal of the World Cup and his seventh overall in the competition, moving him beyond Jeff Hurst in England's World Cup scoring records despite being only 23 years old. Norway threw everything forward searching for another equalizer. Haaland was eventually substituted midway through extra time, while England, exhausted and under immense pressure, defended desperately before securing a dramatic 2-1 victory and a place in the semi-finals. Bellingham's tournament deserves special recognition because his performances have been extraordinary. His 2 goals against Norway gave him multiple multi-goal knockout matches in a single World Cup, making him the first England player ever to achieve that milestone. He also matched England's single tournament record of 6 goals previously held by Gary Lineker and Harry Kane. His collection of Player of the Match awards has become almost unbelievable. This World Cup increasingly feels like the story of Jude Bellingham, a young star repeatedly deciding the biggest matches exactly when England appears to be in serious trouble. None of the controversy surrounding this game diminishes the quality of his finishing. The debate has never been about Bellingham's talent. It is entirely about what happened before England's equalizing attack even developed. From a football perspective, England found a way to survive. Yet 2 specific incidents remain the reason many Norwegian supporters believe they were unfairly eliminated, and both deserve careful examination. Begin with the equalizing goal itself. Moments before Bellingham scored, Orjan Nyland launched a long clearance upfield. During its flight, the ball appeared to behave unusually. It seemed to slow in midair before dropping almost vertically, eventually falling awkwardly toward England's Elliot Anderson, who quickly found Anthony Gordon before Gordon supplied Bellingham. Norway immediately insisted they knew why the ball had behaved so strangely. Their players argued it had clipped one of the cables supporting the robotic sky camera suspended high above the pitch. Nyland pointed toward the sky the instant England scored. So did Erling Haaland. Head coach Ståle Solbakken confronted referee Clement Turpin during halftime to argue exactly the same point. One assistant coach stated bluntly that the referee should have recognized the incident immediately. The importance of that claim lies within the laws of the game. If the ball makes contact with an external object such as a camera cable, play should be stopped immediately because outside interference has occurred, and the restart becomes a dropped ball. Under those circumstances, England's equalizer would never have counted. FIFA responded quickly and firmly. According to its official explanation, the connected ball sensor detected no impact spike and no abnormal signal while the ball traveled through the air, meaning there was no evidence whatsoever that it had touched any external object. This is where many supporters became increasingly frustrated because that same technology has built its reputation on extraordinary precision. Earlier in the tournament, it helped disallow a Croatia goal after detecting the ball brushing against nothing more than a player's hair. England manager Thomas Tuchel even referred to that earlier incident, arguing that if the technology can identify contact with a single strand of hair, it should certainly be capable of detecting contact with a steel camera cable. As a result, football fans are left facing two possible explanations. Either the ball genuinely never touched the cable at all, or, as some analysts have suggested, the tracking system may have limitations when objects are located that high above the playing surface, creating a blind spot at exactly the height where this incident allegedly occurred. FIFA maintains that all 16 tracking antennas installed beneath the stadium roof were functioning correctly and also points out that the broadcast footage showed no visible movement of the camera cable itself. Solbaken's response remained simple and deeply human. From where he stood on the touchline, the ball appeared to fall almost straight down directly in front of the Norwegian bench. His eyes told him one story. FIFA's sensor told him another. And FIFA now expects everyone to place greater trust in the electronic chip than in what they believed they saw unfold with their own eyes. Now comes the second controversial decision, because if the camera cable incident had been the only talking point, many people would probably dismiss it as nothing more than unfortunate luck. But when you place it alongside what happened about 10 minutes into the second half, the debate becomes much more complicated. Norway thought they had scored once again. Torbjorn Hegem bundled the ball into the net following a corner, and the stadium erupted in celebration. Moments later, however, VAR intervened and ruled the goal out after deciding that Erling Haaland had committed a foul on Elliot Anderson with a push during the build-up. Looking purely at the replay, it was indeed a push. Haaland clearly placed both hands on Anderson and moved him before the goal was scored. Under the stricter interpretation FIFA has adopted throughout this tournament regarding grappling and physical contact during set pieces, there is certainly a reasonable argument for disallowing the goal. That alone is not what many people object to. The real issue is the contrast between how different incidents appeared to be treated. One football club owner, Haralabos Vulgaris, summarized the frustration perfectly. He pointed out that a push similar to one seen countless times from corners was examined frame by frame until enough contact was found to erase Norway's goal, while an incident where many believed the ball visibly changed direction after striking a camera cable resulted in no comparable review. That observation captures the heart of the controversy because it highlights the inconsistency many supporters believe they are witnessing. Consider what VAR actually chose to examine during this match. It carefully analyzed a crowded penalty area looking for upper body contact that arguably occurs numerous times in almost every football game before eventually ruling against Norway. Yet when the ball appeared to alter its flight moments before England's equalizer, many viewers felt there was little visible effort to examine alternative camera angles that might have confirmed or disproved the claim involving the overhead cable. To critics, one incident received microscopic attention while the other appeared to receive almost none. That perception, rather than either decision on its own, is what continues driving the debate. It also extends beyond this single match. As several journalists observed afterward, this was not the first major incident during England's tournament where controversial moments appeared to fall in their favor. The concern for many fans is no longer whether Haaland committed a push or whether the ball truly struck the cable. Instead, the frustration comes from never knowing when VAR will become deeply involved and when it will remain completely absent. A review system whose intervention feels unpredictable naturally becomes difficult for supporters to trust consistently. Even so, it is important to approach these incidents with balance rather than immediately assuming injustice. Looked at individually, both decisions can be defended. FIFA's connected ball technology genuinely reported no contact with any external object, and that sensor has already demonstrated extraordinary levels of sensitivity throughout the tournament. Therefore, there remains a perfectly reasonable possibility that the ball never touched the camera cable at all and that the unusual movement was simply an optical illusion created during a chaotic moment. Former refereeing expert Graham Scott also offered a fair observation, explaining that VAR officials are not realistically expected to examine overhead camera cables while reviewing the attacking phase of a goal, and that referees are under constant pressure not to search so aggressively for tiny technical details that they unnecessarily cancel legitimate goals. Regarding Haaland's challenge, the written laws remain clear. He did push Elliot Anderson before the ball reached Hegem. England supporters would also be justified in pointing out another important fact. Jude Bellingham's equaliser was an outstanding finish regardless of how the attacking move began, while his winning goal resulted directly from Orjan Nyland spilling a routine save, an incident entirely unrelated to the earlier controversy. Throughout this World Cup, Bellingham has consistently performed at an elite level, and England has repeatedly found ways to survive difficult situations. Even Erling Haaland himself, despite having every reason to express frustration, refused to claim Norway had been robbed. Instead, he described the incidents as difficult 50-50 decisions that ultimately went against his team before generously acknowledging that England deserved respect as a strong opponent. Norway manager Ståle Solbakken adopted a similarly measured approach, saying he could easily spend time complaining but preferred not to. When the people most directly affected choose restraint over outrage, it is worth being equally careful before making stronger accusations on their behalf. There is another detail that quietly weakens the argument that VAR consistently favored England throughout the evening. Later in the match, England believed it had earned a penalty after Jed Spence went down under a challenge from Oscar Bob. Referee Clement Turpin initially pointed to the penalty spot, only for VAR to recommend another review. After watching the replay, Turpin overturned his original decision and cancelled the penalty. That represented another major intervention, this time removing what looked like a crucial opportunity for England late in a World Cup knockout match. Taken together, those moments paint a more complicated picture than one-sided favoritism. Rather than showing officials consistently helping one team, they suggest a refereeing team and VAR crew making a series of difficult and highly debatable decisions that ultimately affected both sides at different moments. That is precisely why this story feels less like evidence of deliberate manipulation and much more like a tournament repeatedly struggling with inconsistency, uncertainty, and the unpredictable consequences of modern football technology. But here is the point FIFA simply cannot avoid, and it is the part that matters most. This is not really about one team supposedly receiving favorable treatment. There is no solid evidence proving FIFA wanted England to advance, and claiming that would be the easiest and least convincing version of the story. The real issue is far simpler, and honestly far more damaging. FIFA has failed to apply its own officiating system with any consistent standard. The organization has spent years promoting this technology as the solution that removes doubt from football. We were promised a ball sensitive enough to detect a single strand of hair, cameras capable of measuring offsides down to the millimeter, and technology designed to eliminate uncertainty. Yet in the biggest moments of the tournament, that same system can detect the slightest touch of a player's hair in one match, but cannot definitively answer whether the ball struck a large camera cable in another. It overturns one goal after examining an ordinary push during a corner kick, yet appears unwilling to investigate a strange mid-air deflection that many believe changed the entire attack. The technology itself is not necessarily the problem. The real problem lies with the people deciding when to use it, how deeply to review incidents, and when to allow play to continue. There is no clear or consistent standard that supporters, players, or even coaches can confidently understand. Norway was not failed by the technology alone. It was failed by the judgment surrounding the technology. Unfortunately for FIFA, this happened during the worst possible World Cup because the organization's credibility had already suffered repeated damage long before the match in Miami. This has been the tournament of overturned suspensions, controversial referee decisions, Egypt's formal complaint accusing officials of unfair treatment, the disputed Embolo dismissal that transformed Switzerland's quarterfinal, and seemingly endless VAR debates almost every single round. By the time the camera cable controversy arrived, many supporters no longer viewed it as an isolated incident. Instead, they immediately reacted with the feeling that they had seen this story before. Even Erling Haaland's father, Alfie Haaland, posted a brief but pointed message congratulating both Jude Bellingham and the referee, a remark that perfectly reflected the growing skepticism surrounding FIFA's officiating. That growing distrust was not created overnight. FIFA built it step by step throughout the tournament. The result is an organization possessing some of the most advanced officiating technology football has ever seen while applying it in ways that often appear inconsistent from one match to the next. Because of that reputation, Even decisions that may be technically correct are now greeted with suspicion instead of confidence. FIFA earned that skepticism through its own actions rather than having it unfairly imposed from the outside. There is another reality worth acknowledging as well. Had the same camera cable incident benefited a different nation, social media would almost certainly have exploded with conspiracy theories claiming the entire situation had been engineered deliberately. Yet the more realistic explanation is probably far less dramatic. This story is less about hidden plots and much more about inconsistency being presented as precision. Norway did not lose because of some elaborate conspiracy. They were beaten by an outstanding Jude Bellingham, by costly goalkeeping mistakes of their own, and by an officiating system that has repeatedly struggled to deliver decisions with the consistency everyone expected. So where does that leave both teams? England travels to Atlanta for a massive World Cup semi-final against Argentina, led by Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, and genuine belief that ending the nation's long wait for another World Cup title remains possible for the first time since 1966. At the same time, there are legitimate concerns about fatigue after another exhausting knockout battle and questions about how completely England lost control of a match they perhaps should have managed more comfortably. Norway returns home after producing the finest World Cup campaign in its history. Reaching a first-ever quarter-final represents a remarkable achievement, built largely around Erling Haaland's goals and the belief that this team can compete with the world's elite. Yet their tournament ends carrying the frustration of two controversial moments that many believe could easily have been judged differently. There is also a painful final detail. Haaland, who had been the face of Norway's remarkable tournament and had contributed more than half of the team's goals on the road to the quarterfinals, barely influenced the biggest match in the country's football history. He finished with fewer touches than anyone else on the field, even fewer than his own goalkeeper, constantly crowded out, denied meaningful service, and eventually forced off injured during extra time. For a player who had inspired so much hope throughout the tournament, it was a quiet and heartbreaking conclusion. Meanwhile, FIFA once again finds itself facing the same difficult question that has followed it throughout this World Cup. What is the purpose of building the most advanced officiating technology football has ever seen if players, coaches, and supporters cannot trust the consistency of the people deciding when and how to use it? That remains the issue many fans are debating. Do you believe the evidence provided by FIFA's technology, or do you trust what your own eyes appeared to show during that controversial camera cable incident? Whatever your opinion may be, one thing is certain. The discussion is far from over, and with England now preparing to face Argentina in what promises to be one of the biggest semi-finals of the entire tournament, every major refereeing decision from this point forward will face even greater scrutiny than ever before.